to be here, and I thank my mother for writing those words. I don't know how she communicated them to you. I was asked to say a few words about the importance of the ceremony this evening, or more important, the importance of those who are offering the awards and those who are receiving the rewards. And an obvious starting point is that word dialogue, and perhaps the word peace as well. The word peace, as you probably know, is ultimately Latin-based, and the way the Romans used it, pax, it meant the absence of war. And by contrast, there are other languages important to the Middle East, for example, like Hebrew and Arabic, for which the word doesn't mean absence of war, it has the connotation of fullness. It's not the absence of something, it's the fullness of something. It's the fullness of, well, something like dialogue. Logos in Greek means an account, and the dia prefix, which means across or through, implies account across. That is to say, people conversing with each other. And whereas that word begins in the Western tradition with Socrates, whose interest in dialogue is to convince the person on the other side of the table that that individual's preconceptions about what piety is, or courage is, or justice is, that preconception hasn't been thought out, that rather than thinking about it, the individual has simply trotted out the understanding which he learned from his mother, he learned from his teachers, he learned without thinking about it. And Socrates wants to convince others to think about what such words mean, to think even what dialogue is about, to think about what peace is about, to think about what dialogue is, to think about what genuine dialogue is. And the funny thing about Socratic dialogue is that when we have it, it's not genuine, because he never wrote a word. We have it from his pupil Plato. So every discussion that Socrates is represented as having with someone has both sides written by Plato. And the nice thing about Platonic dialogues, as those of you who have read Plato, as most of you have at one time or other in your life, either because you wanted to or because you were forced to. The nice thing about Platonic dialogues is the interlocutor always gives the answer that Socrates needs in order to move the conversation forward. It's never the answer he doesn't expect. Because as much as he wants to teach people to think, within the context of the dialogue as Plato presents it to us, the other person usually is not really thinking. The other person is really responding the way Plato wants him to respond, or her to respond, so that Socrates can carry things forward. And that's not what dialogue in this sense is about. It's not what the world wants or needs. Well, maybe it's what the world wants. It's not what the world needs with respect to dialogue. Genuine dialogue is genuinely speaking across, back and forth, giving an account, me to you and you to me, about what I think and what you think and what I believe and what you believe. And as my father always used to say, we have two ears and one mouth. So genuine dialogue means perhaps less speaking about what I want you to hear than listening to what you're saying about what you believe and what you think. And the same is true for you, less speaking about what you want me to hear than listening to what I have to say about what I think and I believe. The Rumi Forum, of course, as you've heard in two different versions, is really the homeland and the heartland of the notion of dialogue, of the notion of listening and speaking, listening with two ears while one speaks with one. And it is, as you've also heard, based in name on that 13th century mystic and poet, the Sufi Rumi, who himself, miles and miles ahead of his time, is renowned for his statements of interdenominationality, if I could put it that way. That he saw himself, as much as he was a Muslim, as more than merely a Muslim in the capital M sense, the small m sense. Muslim in the sense that that Arabic word means to submit to God's will. But he saw himself as submitting to God's will, not only as a Muslim, capital M, but as a Jew, as a Christian, as a Hindu, even as a pagan. There are a number of very well-known passages from his writing that reflects that. And so the Rumi Forum is based on that kind of thinking on the one hand. And it is on the other hand associated with the movement, as you saw stated in the video, that is associated with the name of Fethullah Gulen, who is in many respects both a student of Socrates and Plato and a student of Rumi, someone who has spent a lifetime trying to negotiate the territory of genuine dialogue, of listening and not just speaking, and of working together across denominational lines, be they religious, or be they ethnic, or be they national, or be they racial, all kinds of lines into which we humans tend to carve ourselves up, both really and artificially. That Gülen is very much a child of the idea of speaking across lines. The movement that is sometimes called the Gülen movement is perhaps better called by the term that the Gülen movement itself moves. It was alluded to. It is the hizmet movement. Hizmet is a Turkish word meaning service. So that the idea that underlies the Gülen movement is an idea not only of talking, but of action. And by the way, in that regard, he is also, all the way back to Socrates. Logos, that gives us the basis of the word dialogue, is a word that is about words. But Socrates is always also about action. The other Greek word is ergon. If you're familiar, for example, with his dialogue about the immortality of the soul, after he's gone on and on and on and on with reasoned arguments as to why we might believe it, when it comes time to drink the hemlock, he quaffs it like it's the best wine he's ever had in his life. So we can say that he puts his mouth where his mouth is. Where his words have been, his actions follow. And that's what the Gülen movement is about. It's about hizmet, it's about action, it's about service. Which is why it's so appropriate that the subtitle of this evening's ceremony is Dialogue, Peace, Tolerance, Community Service, and Understanding. That each of the honorees is part of a process that is not limited to dialogue, but includes service, that is both words and action as a medium and as an instrument for furthering peace, which I need not tell you is something that really needs a lot of furthering in this year, well as in every year. Thank you very much.